Number 7. Orlando Tercero. Binghamton University nursing student Haley Anderson went to Orlando Tercero's apartment after a night of partying with friends. In the early morning hours of March the 8th of 2018, the two were captured together by surveillance cameras, with the footage constituting the final time Anderson was ever seen alive. A few hours later, Tercero was recorded leaving his apartment alone when Anderson failed to return home the following day. The 22-year-old's roommates tracked her phone to Tercero's residence and broke in through a side window, thereupon finding her dead body in his bed. After an autopsy was conducted at Lourdes Hospital in Binghamton, Anderson's death was ruled a homicide by manual strangulation, and investigators began searching for 22-year-old Tercero, who had become their prime suspect. However, it later emerged that after murdering Anderson, Tercero had fled to Nicaragua. He was eventually arrested by Nicaraguan officials at a local hospital, where he'd been taken after attempting to take his own life. Shortly after his arrival in the country, Tercero ultimately faced the charge of femicide in Nicaragua, of which he was convicted and sentenced to 30 years in prison. He was also reportedly charged with second-degree murder in Broome County, New York. In the aftermath of the incident, details of a past relationship between Tercero and the victim were brought to light. Subsequent reports indicated that the man had become obsessed with Anderson after the pair had briefly dated. Tercero wanted to continue their romantic involvement, while Anderson told him she wished to keep their relationship purely platonic. He killed the woman in a fit of rage and jealousy upon realizing his hopes for a romantic future with her weren't reciprocated. Number 6. James Fairweather. On March the 29th of 2014, James Atfield, a father of 5 from Essex, England, was found bleeding in the grass at Castle Park in Colchester. After being stabbed repeatedly, paramedics rushed to the scene, but their last-ditch attempts to save the 33-year-old's life proved fruitless. Local police were reportedly startled by the exceedingly brutal nature of Atfield's murder, as he'd been stabbed more than 100 times by his then unidentified attacker. Although it was determined that the victim had been drinking heavily on the day, the defensive wounds on his arms and hands indicated that he was conscious during the assault and had attempted to fend off his assailant. A few months later, a 31-year-old student at the University of Essex was found dead in the overgrown grass near her home. The victim, Nahid Al-Manea, had reportedly been stabbed in the abdomen and eyes before being left for dead on June the 17th of 2014. During their initial investigation into the pair of murders, the authorities interviewed dozens of local residents with a history of knife-related crimes, one of whom was a teenager named James Fairweather, who'd been convicted of knife-point robbery in January of 2014. Fairweather was able to provide an alibi that initially eliminated him from consideration as a suspect in Atfield and Al-Manea's murders. In May of the following year, however, a concerned dog walker reported seeing the teen loitering in the early morning hours with rubber gloves and a knife. Fairweather was taken into custody, and during his subsequent interviews with a psychiatrist, he allegedly told them about hearing voices in his head that urged him to commit acts of extreme violence. The psychiatrist later testified that the teen had some of the most antisocial and violent thoughts they'd ever heard from a patient. Investigators found documentaries about serial killers such as the Yorkshire Ripper in Fairweather's possession, and it was determined that he developed an obsessive interest in mass murderers before ultimately becoming one himself. In April of 2016, he was found unanimously guilty of murdering both Atfield and Al-Manea. He was consequently sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 27 years. Number 5. Terry Kelly. On October the 16th of 2021, a young child named Cleo Smith disappeared from the Blowholes campsite in the Gascoyne region of Western Australia. It was discovered during an interview with the child's mother that she'd gotten up at about 1:30 a.m. on the previous night to ask for water before going back to sleep. When her parents woke up the next morning, Smith had vanished, along with her sleeping bag. They quickly notified the police, who organized an extensive air, land, and sea search that same day. On October the 21st, the Western Australia Police Force announced that they were treating the case as a kidnapping, and they reportedly offered a reward of roughly $700,000 for information that led to Smith's recovery. The child remained missing for 18 days before she was finally located, alive and well, inside a locked house that was only minutes from her family's home in Carnarvon. Investigators detailed how they'd used forensic leads that allowed them to obtain a search warrant for the home. According to a report by the Daily Mail, the alleged perpetrator of the abduction, 36-year-old Terry Kelly, had an obsession with dolls and had a room full of toys in his house, even though, according to his neighbors, he had no children of his own. The police revealed that Smith was playing with some of Kelly's toys when officers recovered her from his house. The man was charged with multiple offenses, including forcibly taking a child under 16, and appeared in Carnarvon's Magistrate Court in early November of 2021. He eventually pleaded guilty to kidnapping in January of 2022 and faced a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. His motives weren't clear, but some speculated that his obsession had led to him seeking a living doll to add to his collection. Number 4. Jessie J's stalker. In June of 2011, English pop singer Jessica Ellen Cornish, who released multiple studio albums under the stage name Jessie J, suffered a broken foot after falling off the stage while rehearsing for London's Summertime Ball. Not realizing the severity of the injury, Cornish continued to walk on her injured limb for 2 weeks, which only exacerbated the break. She was eventually forced to wear a walking boot for several months, but it was reported that she'd suffer arthritis for the remainder of her life and would be unable to wear high-heeled shoes without experiencing extreme pain. In the wake of the incident, 24-year-old Cornish began receiving strange and disturbing messages from a teenage fan who had tracked down the singer's private contact information. Among the texts Cornish had received was an image of the teen's broken leg. After developing an unhealthy obsession for the celebrity, the teen had allegedly self-inflicted the fracture in an effort to emulate her. Cornish reportedly bolstered her private security measures after growing unnerved by the fan's behavior and afraid for her own personal safety. Number 3. Rohit Sharma. Rohit Sharma became fixated on a female server after having had a brief interaction with her at a shop in Wembley, northwest London in November of 2017. According to a police report on the matter, 28-year-old Sharma returned to the store later that same day with his father. He proposed to the unidentified woman, described as being in her 20s, despite having only just met her. The unidentified woman rejected Sharma, and after he'd continued to pursue her for the next several days, she reportedly quit her job. Sharma tracked down her new place of work and began bombarding her with multiple texts, phone calls, and social media messages every day. In February of 2018, she officially reported her stalker to the police, at which point he was issued a harassment warning. It proved ineffective, and Sharma resumed his incessant stalking until he was formally charged in July of that year. He became a fugitive from justice after failing to show up for a scheduled court appearance in November and remained on the run until the following April, when he was taken back into custody. Sharma ultimately pleaded guilty to charges of stalking, harassment, and failing to appear in court. He was consequently jailed for a term of 29 months, after which it was ordered that he be considered for deportation back to his native country of India. Today's topic was requested by Selina the Scorpio and Bancho. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. John Dubis. In August of 2013, staff members at Jennifer Lopez's pool house discovered that a 49-year-old man who'd been stalking the singer had been secretly living on her multi-million-dollar Hamptons property for 6 days. Subsequent reports identified the individual as John Dubis, a retired firefighter who, under the pseudonym David A. Lopez, routinely posted messages on social media about his obsessive infatuation with the famed celebrity. Fortunately, she was out of town at the time of his extended home invasion. Initially, neighbors believed Dubis's car, which was parked in front of the house, belonged to a friend of Lopez's. He went largely unnoticed by the grounds staff as well, reportedly spending his nights on a couch in the pool shed. He uploaded several images to his social media accounts that investigators believed were taken at various locations on the mansion's grounds. In the captions of his disturbing posts, Dubis boasted about purportedly marrying Lopez and fathering her children. Local police eventually found him on the property and placed him under arrest, charging him with stalking, burglary, criminal contempt, and possessing burglary tools. It subsequently emerged that prior to him breaking into her home, Lopez had taken out a restraining order against Dubis. Number 1. Augustin Lucas Mariani. Police in Miami Beach, Florida, were dispatched to a local apartment after receiving reports of a stabbing at about 6:30 p.m. on November the 29th of 2021. Upon their arrival, the responding officers found 20-year-old Agustin Lucas Mariani lying on top of a young woman later identified as Delfina Pan, aged 29. Both of them had sustained critical stab wounds, and paramedics at the scene attempted life-saving procedures before taking them to Jackson Memorial Hospital. Pan was pronounced dead a short time later, while Mariani ultimately survived what the authorities determined had been a self-inflicted knife wound. Following an investigation into the incident, detectives discovered that Mariani and Pan had worked together at the Kansas Bar and Grill restaurant in South Beach. According to testimony provided by some of the pair's co-workers, Mariani, a bartender, had asked Pan out on several occasions, in spite of repeated rejections which witnesses reported had been tactfully expressed by the woman. Mariani continued to harass her for months as his obsession with her continued to grow. On the evening of Pan's death, she'd left work early for unknown reasons. The restaurant's manager later revealed that Mariani inexplicably left a short time later as well. An eyewitness claimed to have seen the young man at Pan's apartment, where he laid in wait until her arrival, at which point he attacked her with a knife. After fatally stabbing the victim, Mariani turned the weapon on himself. Following his release from the hospital, he was booked into county jail and charged with second-degree murder. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be obsessively stalked for the rest of your life or always be homeless? Let us know in the comments section below.